Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Pocut Putri Jasmin Alyani from class 4C. My student number is 102, and I am back with another video. Can you guess why I'm here again? Yeah, of course, to present something. But now, instead of reviewing a textbook or an article, I will retell the plot of a novel that I have read. So, the novel's title is Twins by Katherine. This novel has 478 pages. Also, I don't get why there were not many people that read this book, because although it has so many pages, this book is very easy to read and it has a great plot. I am actually glad that I found this book before another person did. Anyway, let's get into the story. As you can see in the title, this book tells us the story of two pairs of twins that had problems that drifted them apart. Let me introduce you to them. The first pair of twins introduced in this book were Brooke and Melanie Chandler. They were twins, but not identical. They were very different from each other. Melanie was the golden twin. She was shining with her blonde, beautiful hair, light blue eyes, and cheerful personality. She was very popular and everybody loved her. While Brooke was the smart twin, the dark twin, the mysterious twin. Not many people knew her back then. She had dark brown hair and dark blue eyes. Growing up, Brooke and Melanie were always there for each other. They were best friends. Until one day, they drifted apart because Brooke was tired of being under Melanie's shadow. She distanced herself from Melanie. Melanie, who knew nothing, was confused. She had no clue and thought that Brooke hated her because she felt like Melanie was not good enough for her because she was really smart. And they grew up away from each other. Brooke moved to New York and go to a law school while Melanie stayed in California with her parents. The other twins introduced in this book were Charles and Jason Sinclair. Their mothers died right after giving birth to Charles, so their father, Elliot, hated Charles. Elliot showed so much love for Jason because she looked so much like his dead wife, but he always ignored little Charles. So even when Charles was craving so much love, he always ignored him. When they were 4 years old, Charles was already speaking English, but Jason wasn't. He spoke only to Charles with their own twin language that only they could understand. Elliot noticed that and called Charles to his home office. He told Charles to stop speaking the twin language to Jason, and if he continued to do it, Elliot threatened that he would send Charles away. Mind you, he was only 4 years old at that time. Like, what are you doing threatening a 4 years old? Sick, right? So, little Charles, who was only 4 years old, stopped speaking with their own language and started speaking English to Jason. Jason felt hurt and thought about why Charles didn't want them to be special anymore. But he slowly became fluent in English with the help of Charles. One day, Elliot noticed that Charles had started to learn to read, but Jason hadn't, so he decided to take Jason to the doctor because he thought there must be something wrong with Jason. And he was right. Jason was diagnosed with dyslexia. He couldn't read and write, so Charles always read everything for Jason. Until they both grew up, Elliot never gave Jason some love. Both twins went to universities away from each other. Long story short, Charles graduated from Princeton and went home, But after he went home, his father told him to go away from their house and started living on his own. His father gave him a big house and a lot of money. Elliot didn't care about how much money he spent. He just wanted Charles away from him and Jason. Charles felt upset, yet he still did what his father wanted. He went away. Elliot never told why Charles left, so Jason thought that Charles was so bright that he needed to get away, and they were never close again. One day, Charles, who lived so far away from Jason and his father, felt a strong urge to see Jason. Like, he really needed to see Jason. He had a feeling that Jason was in trouble, so he went home. When he arrived, it turned out that their father had died due to the storm when he was sailing. Jason was shocked with his twins' sudden appearance, and for a moment he was suspicious of him. He thought, what if their father's death wasn't an accident, but Charles killed him? Since he didn't know why their father disowned Charles. But Charles said that he came because he had a strong feeling that Jason needed him. Jason didn't completely believe him, but he asked Charles to help him in the magazine editor company that their father owned, even though their father had made Jason promise not to give Charles any part in the company. So he did. Charles did help Jason in the company, under Jason's tutelage, of course. While on the other side, Brooke was in her office, talking to Charles when Melanie suddenly called her, saying that she was going to move to New York because she signed a contract in a famous modeling agency. Brooke didn't think it was a good idea, but she let Melanie move here. Melanie wouldn't be living in her apartment anyway. And when Brooke hung up the phone, Charles asked who it was, and Brooke told her it was a twin. Charles was a bit shocked because Brooke never told him she had a twin, like himself. So, Melanie moved to New York and signed the contract. At the same day, a writer named Galen that Charles met back then when he was in Africa also moved here to start a career under Charles' company. Charles and Jason planned to have a dinner with Galen, and they asked Brooke to come, so Brooke asked Melanie to come along with her. The five of them then had dinner together, and Melanie got along with everyone except for Charles. Charles seemed to not like her, and so did Melanie. The dinner went well though. Weeks later, there were cases of murder happened in New York, and the victims were all young, beautiful, and independent women. Brooke and her team are trying to solve this case and find out who the killer was, the killer which they called the Manhattan Ripper, but it was hard because the killer left no trace. And the victims were all Brooke's friends, and all of them were killed in their own apartments. In the search of Manhattan Ripper, a lieutenant named Nick Adrian had a crush on Brooke. Not only them, but also began love stories between Jason and Galen and Charles with Melanie. Galen and Jason were so in love with each other. They made love a lot of times. Meanwhile, Charles and Melanie hated each other at first, but love slowly grew between them. Brooke, who had a long-time crush on Charles, felt betrayed by Melanie when she heard the news of them dating, although she never told Melanie that she had a crush on Charles. Brooke became cold to Melanie, and they were distanced again. Not long after that, Melanie and Charles grew apart because Charles couldn't tell her that he loved her. On the other side, Galen and Jason broke up because Galen found Jason sleeping with his ex. Actually, Jason only slept with his ex and not made love to her because his ex suddenly came to him crying. Galen went to Charles and asked him to make love to her to see if she could do it with another man that she didn't love. Charles agreed to do it. After they made love, Galen distanced herself from everything. Suddenly, she felt sick. She took a pregnancy test and turned out that she was pregnant. She canceled the contract with Jason and Charles' company and went far away from New York to have her baby. She gave birth to a beautiful girl, but she didn't know who the father was. It could be Jason or Charles, since she made love to the both of them. And what made it harder is that they were twins. One day, the Manhattan Ripper tried to kill Melanie. When Melanie called Brooke's name, the killer suddenly stopped stabbing Melanie and left. Melanie immediately called Brooke, and Brooke sent paramedics and cops to Melanie's apartment. Melanie was unconscious when they arrived, but thankfully she was still alive, but badly injured. Melanie went through a lot of surgeries, and fortunately she made it. Days later, in Lieutenant Adrian's office, came a woman who looked a lot like Brooke. She was like the older version of Brooke. The woman told her that she knew who the killer was and that it was her husband. She also gave him some proof that her husband was the Manhattan Ripper. Long story short, it turned out that the Manhattan Ripper was Brooke's boss. He was obsessed with Brooke, so he killed and tried to kill Brooke's friends and Melanie until Brooke had no one because he wanted her to be attached to him. Long story short, the misunderstandings between the Chandler twins and the Sinclair twins faded out. Galen and Jason went back together and they found out that the baby was Jason's child and not Charles's. Charles and Melanie went back together and Brooke began a relationship with Lieutenant Adrian. So that was all from me. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.